Welcome to the Golf Report podcast. I'm joined by Stu Burke, the head women's golf coach at Kansas State, and Rinko, assistant women's golf coach. Yeah, how are you both doing? And just tell me how you're feeling and how your team's doing going to regionals next week.
Yeah, obviously we've had a pretty crazy month with the AMWA Championship, and then coming off a Big 12s, also having the winner there individually. But yeah, the teams responded well. They're looking forward to their for many of them their first regional experience, and I think that's exciting with a team that's never been there before, that's had that goal from the start of the year.
Yeah. So let's talk about your regional. You're going to be playing at Lexington, Kentucky. Keene Trace Golf Club. Hosted PGA Tour tournament for many years. So just tell me about anything you know about the golf course and just how you feel about your regional site. You have some good teams. Florida State's there, USC, TCU. So yeah, just tell me about anything you know about the course and just how you're feeling about your regional site.
Yeah, we've looked into the golf course a little bit. We've spoken to some other coaches that have played there in the fall, and some of our men's team have played some junior events out at Keene Trace. So, I think we've got the information we need, and we've based our practices sort of around getting ready. It's going to be very similar to our home course at Cobert Hills here in Manhattan. So, I think with any golf course, especially in women's golf, you got to drive the ball well. You got to control your speed well on the greens, and the bit in between. If you have a really great week, you can have a really special week and score.
Yeah, absolutely. Just tell me about how your team's feeling going into regionals. Finished fifth at the conference championship, Big 12 conference championship. Your team kind of had a mixed bag there. First and second round, maybe would have hoped for better, but your final round, was very good. You shot 5 under as a team. Sophie Burr got the individual victory. She shot 5 under in the final round. Then Carla shot 2 under, and you had Noah shoot 1 under in the final round. So just I would call it a mixed bag at Big 12 championship for your team. So just tell me how your team's feeling going into regionals next week.
Yeah, I mean, I'll talk about the first two rounds. I'll let Rinko tell you a little bit about the last round and how they're feeling. The first two rounds, I think we had a good plan. The first round, we got off to a decent start. The second round, we kind of, both players and coaching staff wavered a little bit from the plan, and we got behind the eight ball early on, and then we just really couldn't get it back out in front of us. So that's disappointing. We kind of played our way out of the tournament that second round, and we knew we needed a response from them that third round. So, let you take over.
Yeah, I mean, Stu and I just took a moment after the second round and we sat in the car for about 20 minutes just trying to figure out what we need to do the final day because obviously we know this team is really capable. They've put in a lot of time and effort, and we also did really well there last year. We finished third as a team, which is the best finish they've ever had at Big 12. So we knew that a big round from them was coming, and the final day it was super windy. It was really difficult conditions, and we definitely, I mean, we shot the best score in comparison to the rest of the field by a mile. And maybe that works in our favor because it's something that they're accustomed to. But yeah, Stu took charge of the final round. He told exactly what we're gonna do, exactly where we're gonna be, and we stuck to the game plan. And I think that really reflected well.
Yeah. It's gonna be for both of you, but mostly I wanted to tailor my next question, to Rinko. You're on the back for Carla. So just what was it like to see Carla, win the N1, just be on her back?
It's a surreal experience. It's still not processed for me, and I don't know if it ever will. Of course, it's every person's dream to kind of walk down that fairway on 18th and have it. It feels like the whole world's watching you and clapping for you. So, we've been with her since she was a freshman at Tulane, and then transferred over to Kansas State, and we've seen the whole process of it. So for her to get that was awesome for us. And we know it's just the beginning. She's going to continue to do this and make achievements that we know she's capable of. But I'm so grateful for her to ask me to caddy for her that week, and I got to experience that, and I'll never forget that.
Yeah. And last question about Carla, I was reading about this. I think you both coached at Tulane, I believe, and she transferred from Tulane. So, just tell me about, any, how you've seen her, grow over the years, from Tulane to now, Kansas State.
I mean, Carla always had a little bit of the special. She could hit some shots that other people couldn't hit. Her technique is very, very, very good. It's very unique, but it's very good. It's very repeatable. So, really it was just putting some of the scoring pieces together, just adding a little bit of variety to her short game, having better control with the putter, understanding cause and effect with her golf game. That was pretty important. But honestly, the thing that I'm most proud of was how she dealt with the media, how she, her true personality came out. She was very, timid and didn't want to do pictures or media or anything in the beginning, which I understand. She just wanted to play golf. That was her true love. And over the years, we've kind of trained her and told her like, hey, this is part of it. You're so good that this is going to be something that people want to are going to want from you. They're going to want your time. They're going to want your story. And she told it beautifully in a lot of those interviews that she did after ANWA.
Yeah. And so back to regionals, my last question on regionals, I just wanted to get a sense of, how does your team prepare for regionals? Do you do anything different for regionals from other tournaments, or is it, pretty much the same, for regionals from, any other tournament?
No, it's pretty much the same.
Okay.
Really making sure we're taking care of those, those little technical checks and, the tedious things that we have to do are non-negotiables prior to getting there. Some of our putting stuff, our ball striking stuff, just making sure we're where we need to be at those things. But it's just another tournament.
Okay.
The field that we're in, it's a good field. There's some great teams there. And we're really going to enjoy the experience. It's we're going to advance. That's the goal. And the players understand that. It's not, hey, we made it, we got to regionals, great job, what a great season, and look around and smell the roses. But we're going out there to try and advance, and we know that's going to be difficult, but we're gonna give it hell and see what we can do.
Yeah. So correct me if I'm wrong, but obviously you host a home tournament in, Kansas in September, but I was interested to know you also host a home tournament in Tucson, Arizona. Your team won back in March. So tell me about, how does, Kansas State host a home tournament in Tucson? Just what is it like for your team, to play a home tournament, in Tucson, Arizona when,
Yeah, we're
mostly
we're really lucky.
Kansas. Mhm.
We co-host with the University of Missouri,
Okay.
and I'll be super honest with you. I've hosted the tournament twice when I was here the first time around, and this time, and Joe Helms is our tournament director down there, and her, she lets both Caroline and I just coach. We show up on site and pretty much everything's prepared. We bring an SID and Mizzou bring a athletic trainer, and everything else is pretty much taken care of for us. We do the pins with the head pro prior to getting down there.
Okay.
And we've discussed tee setup and things over a few Zoom meetings, but Joe does just such an amazing job of letting Caroline and I just coach the golf course, the things, the snacks, the volunteers, the community come out and watch. It's like an LPGA event. There's hundreds and if not thousand people out there watching throughout the 3 days.
Yeah. That's great. So another thing I noticed about your roster, all your players are international. You have a few Spanish players, Netherlands, Mexico, Japan, and Belgium. So obviously, coach, you're international yourself. You're from Scotland, I believe. So just what's it like for your team, to be comprised of all international players, from, many different countries?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one thing that Kansas State has above others is we put family first. It's a family atmosphere within our university and our athletic department, and it was the reason I wanted to return to K State as the head coach. I had such an amazing experience my first time around as an assistant, and I'd worked other places, and I never quite felt the connection that I did at Kansas State anywhere else I'd ever been. So I think that makes the transition a lot easier.
Yeah.
The girls are great. They're all in the same boat. Somebody can't go home for the weekend. So it's natural when you're away from home, you're overseas, you might get a little homesick, but everybody understands that. And that's, as a coach, to have such a close knit group of players that, they do everything together. They play together, they socialize together. A lot of them are in the same classes. That's a kind of neat thing to
Yeah.
see.
Yes, you said, you have a close-knit team, but I've asked a lot of coaches this who have international players. You have an international player, do you find that the transition for them is difficult at first, or do they seem to, transition, pretty well at the beginning?
Yeah, I mean, all of our players come and visit.
Okay.
So that's something that's really important to Coach Rinko and I is having them on campus and letting them get a feel for it. I would much rather a player chose a different option than that had been here and didn't think it was the right fit for them, than hadn't been here and everything was new and surprising when they got here. I think that makes the transition a lot easier for them. I think just the community here and what we do as a team to welcome our new recruits is another part of what makes the transition a lot easier for them. And really, just a quick story. Our Japanese player, Coach Rinko and I were trying to find a class for her on campus. We were not on campus a lot. We didn't really know. We had a map out, and a girl came out of the building and said, "Hey, what are you looking for? I can help." And we told her the building and the class, and she goes, "Oh, it's over here." And as we started to walk towards it, she's like, "Coach, I got her. I'll take it from here. Thanks. We can get her to class. You guys go do what you need to do." Not an athlete, just a regular student, just willing to help out. So for me, that was, we're, constantly voted the friendliest students, the Princeton Review. So that was a firsthand experience for me seeing that.
So now I had two questions I wanted to ask for Rinko. Obviously, you're from Georgia, and you played at Georgia, and you had, a great career playing golf. You played in two U.S. Women's Opens. You won the Georgia Women's Amateur Championship. You played in some other, big tournaments. So my question is, given that, you've played and you've had a, very successful career, does that help you, relate to your players, and does that help you, in your coaching career now?
Absolutely. I think it gives me something that when we're talking about a U.S. Open qualifier, we're talking about U.S. Amateur qualifier and how important it is for me to have that firsthand experience. I think I can confidently tell them why they need to do certain things or why they need to prioritize certain events over others. And I think even in the coaching aspect on the golf course, it gives me a lot of personal experience of okay, maybe Alenka might be feeling a certain way on this shot, so this is something I could tell her. So definitely, I think that just having that experience kind of helps me relate to them and hopefully give them a little bit more advice than another coach that's maybe not played at a higher level.
Yeah. Then another thing I saw, you served as the player services coordinator for the Symetra tour, which is now the Epson tour. So just tell me a little bit, how did you end up in that position? What did you learn from that position? And just, overall, how was that position for you?
Yeah, I mean, when I graduated from college, obviously I was thinking about maybe turning professional, and if I was being honest with myself, it wasn't really the route that I wanted to take. I wanted to go more into coaching, college coaching, but
Yeah.
when you're 21, fresh out of college, it might not be the best thing for you. It might just be too close to age with the girls. So I decided, okay, well, let's just maybe try something else, a different aspect of in the golf industry and see if I like that as well. So just got connected with the LPGA, worked there for about a year, and unfortunately, it was during the COVID year, so it maybe not have been the traditional job that that position would have been. But it gave me a lot of experience and also helped me build some connections for girls and getting sponsor exemptions into Epson or understanding the regulations of the LPGA a little bit better than someone
Yeah.
who maybe isn't on that tour yet.
Mhm.
So it's helped me in the coaching, and I'm really glad I did it. I made some
Yeah.
lifelong friends there, and yeah, it's definitely growing to be a better place.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I'll be volunteering in an LPGA tournament next week, so that's where I'll be. So for both of you, mostly for Coach Burke, I'm interested in learning. Tell me about, you grew up in Scotland, I believe, and now you're the head women's golf coach at Kansas State. So just tell me about, your journey from growing up in Scotland to becoming, head coach in Kansas State, and then also Rinko, you can just tell me, how did you, transition from, working at the Symetra towards now being, a college coach?
Yeah, I ran a recruiting service in Scotland and across Europe, and I was working with and helping a lot of players who were coming out to the States and having great success. And I was talking with or actually at lunch with Jeannie Sutherland at a girls' junior
Okay.
in the UK, and she was telling me her assistant coach, she was worried about him leaving, and I jokingly said, "Hey, if he leaves, I'd be happy to come work for you." And she asked me, "Look, are you really interested in getting into coaching?" I said, "Yeah, I would really like to explore some opportunities." And fast forward about a couple of months, I'd spoken to a couple of coaches, and Coach Knight from Kansas State gave me a call and asked me if I'd be interested in interviewing for the position. And yeah, I absolutely was. And kind of the rest is history.
Mhm.
So, that was a kind of throwaway comment at the right time, sort of set my path into coaching. And, once I got here, I absolutely loved it.
Yeah.
I loved the day to day. I loved you could work a 90-hour week, or, there were some quiet times, in the summer as well, when you weren't recruiting. But I just loved everything about the college athletic experience in the US. So.
Yeah. And I guess
Yeah,
for Rinko, I can just, summarize what my question is. Just tell me about, transitioning from, working for the Symetra towards now being a college coach, and just, how has that transition to now being a college coach? How's that been for you?
it's actually a funny story how I started working for Stu. I knew him
Okay.
when he was at Southern Cal when I played, and had a lot of respect for him. I knew the girls on the team well, and they really liked him as well. And when I told one of my friends who played at Southern Cal I wanted to get into coaching, she mentioned, "Hey, maybe you should contact Stu. He's at Tulane, and you never know what you're gonna get." So I emailed, even though he had an assistant at the time. I emailed him asking about, maybe he can be my mentor. He called me that same day and said, "Hey, things turned out. My assistant's actually leaving at the end of the semester. Um, you know, like to hire you." So it was probably one of the easiest interviewing process I've ever done, and we just kind of clicked right away. And I came down to New Orleans. Really enjoyed what he was telling me and what he wanted to do with the program. And yeah, it's hard to find a good boss in this, but Stu's always had my back, and I think we really work well as a team.
So did you start playing at Southern Cal, then you went to Georgia, or vice versa?
No, I played at Georgia, but I was friends with his girls on that team.
Oh, okay. You're just friends with Southern Cal girls. Okay. That makes sense. So the final question, I usually end on this. Just tell me about, what do you enjoy most about coaching for both of you? What have been some of your best experiences, and just, what have you like enjoyed most about coaching so far?
I'll go first.
Yeah, I mean, just building relationship with the girls. Our team is extremely focused on. We're very family oriented, so I enjoy that aspect. It's fun to maybe win as an individual, but winning as a team is 16 times more fun.
Yeah,
And then probably, I mean, Onwa, and then Big 12s right after Sophie winning was a pretty cool experience.
yeah,
Yeah, I touched on it earlier. I just think seeing young people, improving, growing, and whether they go on to a career in golf or they go on to a career outside of golf, it's pretty cool to follow where your players are and where your players can go. So we've got everything from school teachers to major champions. I've been fortunate enough to coach in the past, and I think that's the greatest part about it. Yeah, we're moving into a different time in college athletics, and I think golf is going to remain one of the more traditional style sports where ladies have a scholarship, they come in and they compete, and we're doing everything we can as a sport and as a university to give them the best student athlete experience possible. So
yeah,
I think that as long as we continue to, first and foremost, know that our job as golf coaches is to provide them with a great student athlete experience and help them improve, both on and off the golf course, our sport's going to be just fine.
Yeah. Well, just to touch on what Rinko said, yeah, you've won a lot this year. You've had, two team victories, three second place team finishes, and you had first and second individually at the Big 12 championship. So, just to recap, just a last question, just all that success, what does it mean to you as coaches that your team, has two team victories, three second place finishes, and did well individually last week at the Big 12 championship.
It's great. It really is great. But I just said this in my quote for the regional preview.
Yeah.
Our season starts on Monday. Some of those performances that we had a wobble, or they weren't good, or we finished second, and we just really got to keep our focus on May. That's one thing I learned at Southern Cal. May's when it's important. And everything we've achieved up to now has been awesome. I'm really, really proud of this group. But to really push forward and really do what I know we're capable of, we need to turn up in Lexington and perform at our best. And if it's good enough to end up in California, so be it. If not, I'll still be incredibly proud of what we've achieved this year.